All right. Good afternoon, folks. So, unfortunately, I'm not here during this spell or the next. My son has an appointment, so here I am in virtual instead to go over the lesson for you. So, today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going over our forms of community interactions. We already talked about how energy moves through a food chain, the food web, excuse me, and the energy pyramid. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how individual living things will actually interact with each other in that given community. So, let's move on to it. I'm going to do the weird presenting thing. It's going to get kind of crazy for a brief moment while I get this set up. Now, what we left off on was this. Go away. All right, so we talked about those exceptions to the rule, right? The places where we don't expect to see life, and then we find it because they had evolved this entirely different way to take in energy, even though the sun was just plain not available to them. Well, all right, that's cool. And those exceptions do exist, but for the regions, they're really not that important because they don't really exist in New York State. So let's move on. Oh, that was a chunky one. All right, so when we take a look at these three types of interactions, these are the three different ways that organisms can affect one another. They are ranked in order of how commonly they occur. In most cases, most of you are only going to need a word or two. You probably all know what competition is. We already had a lab on it. Beaks of Finch's lab. You were competing against other teams to pick up the seeds in order to survive. Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen, we have covered competition, right? Two or more biotics, living things, competing over some kind of resource. Many different choices. The primary ones are listed there. Predation. So one biotic killing and eating another biotic, which means that everything here boils down to what are their adaptations? What are those special traits that they have that are going to give them an advantage towards either killing something or to avoid being killed? And finally, the third type of interaction is called symbiosis. And this is one that we will go into much greater detail when I see you tomorrow. Today, we have a lab on it. All right, so let's talk about competition first. And really, for competition, there's only a couple of things that you folks need to know. Number one, understand that competition is incredibly common. Almost everything in almost every scenario of its life in nature is competing. Now, because of that, though, competition tends to be like low key. Animals are not out there trying to body check each other out of the way to get a clover. There are other clovers. It's not worth it. So, like aggressive competition really doesn't happen much. It's not worth it. There's always more. There is more food somewhere else. There is more land somewhere else. It's not worth getting the crap kicked out of you in order to get that clover. All of this is available in the notes. I'm going to go a little bit quickly because I just want to get this through. And there's a limit to the amount of recording and space left on my Google Drive. Moving on. So this looks violent, but neither of these beetles are going to get hurt. These are Hercules beetles. They grab and they throw each other. They throw each other off trees. The loser will fall like 100 feet to the forest floor. But they're wearing their own armor. They're in no danger. They don't get hurt from this. They're not heavy enough to get damaged when they hit the ground. Bighorn sheep will headbutt each other in acts of dominance in order to really kind of prove that this is my space. And that headbutt if they were to hit us, would kill us instantly. But they have an extra thick skull. They have an extra layer of cerebral spinal fluid inside their skull so that when they slam into each other and their brain moves, we would get a concussion. They get nothing because that extra fluid cushions it, right? They're made for it. Once again, looks violent, isn't. Red-headed skinks have no teeth. Look in the jaws there. They kind of grab each other and they just wrestle. They're just trying once again to assert who is stronger, and then the loser leaves. Cute little duckies pulling on a worm. They're competing over food. Is he cute? Or my favorite, look at how concerned that ground squirrel looks as the other one's coming at him. Right? And we will see animals. They'll jump on each other. All of a sudden, they'll be rolling all over the place, making noise, kicking, hissing, whatever. And then one of them will skedaddle. One of them will just run off. Why? Because it admits defeat. That may look like a fight, but it's not really a fight. It's just them trying to prove that I am the superior. So, how do animals avoid competition then? Because it's an unnecessary use of energy. Well, first, you can live in the same place if you eat a different food. If you look down here to the, can I get my pointer? No, apparently not. But if you look down here to the heron, the stork, and the ducks, they live together fine. Why? Because the heron eats fish and frogs, and the ducks eat small insects and like some plants. They're not looking for the same food. If we look over at the giraffe and the zebra, they both now eat the same food, but they have different strategies. The giraffe will eat from the tops of the tree. The zebra will eat from the ground. No competition. They're eating different parts. In the past, one of my favorite people to go out to like a restaurant with was a friend of mine named Courtney. And the reason for that was because when we ordered wings, she prefers the flats, the pieces that have the two bones. I prefer the drumsticks. If they put a bowl of wings down between me and her, we would never fight over wings because I have my favorites, she has hers. And so we would just both go after our favorites from that supply. And nobody ends up fighting over it. Besides, she kicked my butt anyway. Now, in terms of living space, well, you could do what something like the finches do. This is the small, medium, and large ground finch from the Galapagos Islands. Remember those? And they all nest in the Galapagos Islands because that's where they live. And they're such small birds, they can't fly anywhere else. They're stuck there. Well, how do they do it? They nest in different parts of the tree. The smallest finches go to the top branches that can support them. The largest finches go to the bottom branches that support them. And the medium finches go into that middle tier because they are neither large for the low branches nor small for the upper branches. So even though they're living in the same area and need the same environment to nest, they don't compete with each other because they're looking for different layers. Where does it get violent? It gets violent for mates. In nature, if competition is going to get violent and dangerous, this is it. If two male lions meet in the wild, usually if one of them controls a pride and the other one does not, they're going to fight to the death. One of them is walking away, the other one is not. And a good number of times, even the winner dies afterwards due to infection, blood loss, and things like that. Because in this scenario, their best chance to pass on their genes, to be a successful organism in nature, to reproduce, is to get that pride of lions for themselves. And for the old male who has the pride, his best chance is to keep it. And because that is far more limited than space or food, the amount of competition, the willingness to indulge in violence becomes much, much higher. All right, let's go on to the second one. Predation, number 2. one biotic killing and eating another one. And what this comes down to, ultimately, here's what's really important here, is that underlined part, the evolutionary arms race. So, if you have never had a social studies class where they talked about something like the Cold War between the US and the USSR back before it collapsed, basically the idea is pretty simple. It is one side saying, don't come at me, I have a knife. And then the other side says, well, you have one knife, I have 3 knives. I have a baseball bat, I have a battle axe. I have a rifle, I have 50 rifles. You get the idea, right? Each side is just trying to one up the other one. This is true in evolution as well. As the predator gets faster, like a cheetah, the prey animals must get faster as well. But now that the prey animals are faster, the cheetahs must get faster. But when the cheetah's faster, now the prey has to get faster. And this just continues to build and build and build. And it can result in some amazing things. Up top, there's a bird. Its head is sticking out of the hole right here. Camouflage to blend in. Here is a cicada. Once again, blending in with the bark of the tree that it's on. Those camouflage abilities didn't happen by chance. They evolved step by step related to the predator that was coming after them. All right, so let's look at some examples. Right? Because every living thing doesn't want to end up like that water buffalo. That is not what they want to do. In most cases, if you watch these, you're going to see graphs, and we'll have more of this when I'm here, where the prey should always be higher, and when the prey has a good year, just shortly afterwards, their predator will have a good year. But a good year of predator means the prey drops, which means now the predators drop. And when there's very few predators, now the prey does really well. But as soon as the prey does really well, the predator now does really well, which causes the prey to drop. You get the idea. It's a very regular movement of this population graph. All right, so let's talk about specifically how things manage this. Right? We can have camouflage. You all know what camouflage is by now. This is a katydid. I'm pointing right at its eyeball. This entire leaf structure here, this is its body. Here's one leg. There's another one. There's a leg out the front. Here's the antenna going up. Incredibly well camouflaged. Mud frogs, not quite so. We're really good at picking them out, but most predators have a harder time. These are praying mantises that have evolved to look like chewed up, dying leaves so that their prey don't notice them. This orchid spider, can you see it? You probably can't. Very easy for us. What we found out is this spider doesn't have color camouflage so well. It actually has infrared camouflage. The carapace, the exoskeleton the spider has the same lines in infrared that bounce off the flower. Most bugs see infrared. They don't see visible light. They see a different part of it. And so to those bugs, this spider is perfectly camouflaged. They can't see it when they approach because they're not looking at it the way we are. It's just really neat stuff. Sometimes color can be used. And now we're not talking about blending in. Now we're talking about the opposite. The Monarch Butterfly. It advertises, I am poisonous. Don't eat me, with bright reds and oranges, blacks and white. This is a really, really common color scheme. Common enough that other things like the Viceroy mimic it, trying to gain that same protection, even though they are not poisonous. They're faking. They're bluffing. All these animals use color to say, I am dangerous. Do not come after me. Yes, I recognize the red and blue frog in the top left is a plastic toy, but it was a good picture. Physical defense is always possible. Turtles have a shell. Armadillos can roll up into their ball. If the predator can't bite or crush through, they're safe. But it's worth noting, you could also just be big, strong, and dangerous. That is also a form of physical defense. Water buffalo are not attacked by lions usually because they're just too dangerous. Go for something easier. Go for a gazelle. Go for a zebra. Go for something that we can handle. This is the last resort. All right. So let's get into the key for this and the introduction to your lab. So, symbiosis has 3 types. Man, there's a trend with this 3s, isn't there? There's always 3 of everything. How many different types of water solutions did we have? 3. Hypotonic, hypertonic, isotonic. How many forms of community interactions? 3. Competition, predation, symbiosis. How many forms of symbiosis? 3. You guys get the idea. There's a pattern. Now, for each one of these, I have included not just their name, but I've also included some symbols. And I strongly suggest you draw the symbols into your notes. The symbols are very useful. And the reason they're very useful is because you can use them when you're reading the question and just put a little plus sign or a little minus sign or a plus sign or a 0 or a plus sign and then another plus sign wherever you read it in the question. And then when it asks you, what kind of relationship do they have? You have your symbols, you know which one it is. So I'm not going to go greatly into detail with these. That's going to be the lab. So the first type is the best known and the most common, parasitism. Parasites benefit plus when something else loses minus. So a mosquito jams its stupid little mouth into your skin and starts sucking your blood out. You are losing blood. Yeah, you're not losing too much. Is a mosquito going to kill you? Heck no. Mosquito doesn't want to kill you. You're its food source. It wants to come back to you again and again and again. Killing you would hurt its chances for survival. Most parasites don't want to kill the host. Killing their host is a problem that ends their food delivery. But the mosquito is going to gain that meal. You're going to lose your blood plus minus. Mosquito benefits, you lose. Now, the second one is commensalism. Commensalism is easily the hardest to remember because it has the longest name, and the name doesn't relate to what it does. But with commensalism, what we're looking at is we are looking at one of them benefiting, because you'll notice all of these have a plus on one side. All forms of symbiosis happen because there's a benefit for them to get. So commensalism, one of them is going to benefit, and the other one really isn't affected. The best example of this is a Remora fish. You see them attached to sharks. Hold on. Let me find the picture. We'll come back to it. See, here's a Remora right there on the underside of a shark. They're like perfectly streamlined. They cause no additional drag in the water, and they just slide through. The shark doesn't lose any energy carrying them. Shark doesn't lose any food. They're not biting it or drinking its blood. They're just hitching a ride. They benefit. They are protected. Not that many things want to mess with a shark. And the shark is unaffected. It doesn't matter that the Remora is there. It's not affecting the shark's ability to survive. Commensalism, plus 0. The last one, mutualism, plus. So this is pretty easy. Both sides of the equation benefit from it. They work together. Everyone wins. Hummingbirds, once again, and flowers, or bees and flowers, whatever, are perfect examples. I talked about it earlier. The flower makes the nectar for them to drink. The animal drinks the nectar, getting food. and it spreads the pollen for the plant. The plant gets its pollen spread, the animal gets the food. Both of them are benefiting plus plus. Your lab today will be to go through 6 different examples and try to identify which form of symbiosis each one of these are. Allow me to show you. So here is the symbiosis lab. Now, the first 4 pages, each person will get. The next 5 pages are sitting in red folders labeled symbiosis stations in the back of the room. First thing you're going to do is you're going to take these words in the word bank and you're going to fill them into these blank spots. Okay? Just pair them up. Then you're going to take a look at the relationships and you're going to start filling out this table. So at station 1, it'll say station 1 on top of the paper. You're going to name the first organism and then the second organism. You're going to identify which one benefits, which one is neutral, which one is harmed. Note, out of these 3 right here, you are only going to be filling out 2 of them. Sometimes you might only be filling out 1 of them. If it's mutualism and they're both benefiting, you're going to put both names down right in this box here. And these 2 won't have anything. And then the last box, you're going to identify what form of symbiosis is it. Is it parasitism, commensalism, or mutualism? If you don't remember, use your notes. If you don't have your notes, you should have completed this part on the first page. Use this. If you can't complete this part, use your notes. All right, so you're going to go through all 6 of the papers, all 6 of the stations that are in those folders. And then it wants you to do a summary. All right, now this part is the exact same examples. It's still stations 1 through 6. The type of relationship is literally what you already figured out. What they want you to do is they want you to put it into a sentence, a complete sentence. It need only be 1, maybe 2 if you really want to go overboard on it. But just explain why. Why is this mutualism? Why is this commensalism? Why is this parasitism? And then finally, 3 questions down here at the bottom. And once again, read each one and identify, is it mutualism, commensalism, or parasitism? That's the lab. It really shouldn't take very long. If you have extra time today, I would strongly suggest, especially with this class, because so many people ended up in the red, look through your notes, look through your binders, through your folders, through your bag. Look in those little corners of the bag where you know that paper just gets smashed down into some kind of ball. And see if you have any labs in there that could get finished. You got time. For those of you who got green, which is predominantly all y'all, I think I'm pointing in the right direction, depending on whether or not this flips it around. But everybody over by soup and the fish and stuff like that, help them out. Lift up your fellow classmates. All right. Ooh, that looks ugly. Stop that. All right. I will be back tomorrow. I just needed to step out today. So I hope this helps. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, feel free. Check the lab. The lab literally explains exactly what it wants you to do in there. I also have another video where I go over the lab in more detail, already posted in Schoology. Have a great day. I will see you tomorrow.